bring you greetings from the ancestors who have brought us this far. Believe that if you measure and if you test and if you work and think together, you'll find that you can make work not too hard, and in fact, not only will it not be too hard, you can become a joy. So ICLS and our symbol, Jehuti, I greet you this morning in the name of Jehuti. And I'd also like to greet you in the name of all of our ancestors who helped me and all of us, I believe, to arrive at this point and give us the inspiration for the way forward. In the name of Ma'at and Osir and Osset, thank you for being here. Welcome.
Greetings, good people. Greetings. Men of Morehouse, Morehouse community of faculty and staff, and our distinguished Morehouse guests. Thank you all for attending today's special Crown Forum organized by the Morehouse ICLS. ICLS, as Dr. Hewitt explained, is the International Comparative Labor Studies Program, and it's housed in the division of HISMA, which is the Humanities, Social Sciences, Media and Arts division here at Morehouse. ICLS, founded by sociology professors Dr. Cynthia Hewitt, Dr. Michael Hodge, Cleola Brown, and the late Bill Lucy, was established in 2017 to create pathways for Morehouse graduates to enter social justice careers in leadership research and community organizing. Our Black colleges and universities have played an inextricable role in fostering scholars who spearheaded academic disciplines that support the advancement of human and civil rights in the South. ICLS aims to close the gap conceptually, organizationally, and pedagogically between mental, manual labor for the cultivation and proper remuneration of all work. In the words of Morehouse alumnus, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, all labor has dignity. So at this moment, I would like to share two pertinent announcements before we actually welcome our moderator and guest of honor. Oh, that's already it. Thank you. So students, ICLS invites you to take part in Union Semester. New York Union Semester is a pilot program of the International Comparative Labor Studies offered in partnership with the City University of New York School of Labor and Urban Studies. The semester-long program combines rigorous academic study with firsthand experience within the labor movement. The undergraduate certificate in labor studies is designed for individuals who want to study the social, political, and cultural impact that the organization of work has on employees and their communities. Completing the program, undergraduates will earn 16 credits and are awarded a certificate of labor studies. So if you're interested in learning more, please take a photo of this image here, and you can contact the folks that are listed there, myself included, Dr. Tara Taylor. So on to our second announcement. So this is for Morehouse students, faculty, and staff. So the Morehouse College chapter of the American Association of University Professors, known as AAUP, in collaboration with the Andrew Young Center for Global Leadership, invites you to attend a teach-in tomorrow, February 28th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. in the African American Hall of Fame. Entitled Fight, Flight, or Freeze, Confronting the Crisis in Higher Education, this event will explore some of the latest issues confronting higher education and beyond. AAUP invites you to attend and explore strategies and solutions to the current crises. You will receive an email regarding this event, but you can also welcome to take a photo of this one as well, but it will be here tomorrow from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. And so now it is my pleasure to introduce our moderator. Patrick Darrington is a 2022 graduate of Morehouse College with a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science. While at Morehouse, Patrick began writing for the Maroon Tiger in 2019. This decision, along with the support from individuals like Professor Rob Thomas, led him to pursue journalism as a career path. Patrick credits much of his current success to the teachers who positively impacted him during his time at Morehouse. Patrick has since written for multiple national outlets, including Teen Vogue and Inside Climate News. While working for the Alabama Political Reporter, Patrick notably covered unionization attempts by Alabama auto workers at the beginning of 2024. And that's our reason for inviting him back to be one of our moderators. Currently, Patrick is the breaking news reporter for AL.com, a position he started in September 2024. Based in Mobile, Alabama, Patrick primarily covers stories about public safety in his current role. He has experience covering a range of topics, including state politics, prisons, labor, and local issues. Patrick was named a third-place finalist for the Best Spot News Story in Division C by the Alabama Press Association in 2024. So Morehouse, please give a warm welcome home to your brother, Patrick Darrington.
Good morning. Oh, hold on. Was that too loud? Y'all good? Good morning. Great, got you. Yeah. So thank you, Dr. Taylor, for that very humbling and warming welcome. As she said, my name is Patrick Darrington. I am a proud Morehouse graduate, class of 2022. Got my Bachelor of Arts in Political Science. Any political science majors in the crowd? Yeah. Okay. Yep. Best department. Sorry for anybody who isn't there, so sorry. But yeah, I'd like to extend a special thank you again to Dr. Taylor and Dr. Cynthia Hewitt and those at the International Comparative Labor Studies program here for giving me the opportunity to be here today. As y'all know, it is Black History Month, and it's a perfect time to honor labor's role within Black history, our history. And I thought it fitting to share a quote from our most famous brother, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And so, especially with the rise of technology within labor. So he said, and I quote, "New economic patterning through automation is dissolving the jobs of workers in some of the nation's basic industries. This is, to me, a catastrophe. We are neither technologically advanced nor socially enlightened if we witness this disaster for tens of thousands without finding a solution. And by a solution, I mean a real and genuine alternative, providing the same living standards which were swept away by a force called progress, but which for some is destruction. The society that performs miracles with machinery has a capacity to make some miracles for men, if it values men as highly as it values machines," end quote. While we understand Dr. King's fight for racial equity, essential as it being essential to our civil rights, he also expressed how labor was entwined in that struggle. That struggle for labor rights as civil rights will be the focus for our discussion today. And so with that, I'd like to begin with talking about our speaker for Crown Forum, Fred Redmond. Fred Redmond is the Secretary-Treasurer of the American Federation of Labor and Congress of Industrial Organizations, popularly known as the AFL-CIO. So, great job for whoever shortened that. And so on June 13, 2022, he was unanimously elected to the position as the highest-ranking African-American officer in the history of America's labor movement. Mr. Redmond was first elected to this position by the AFL-CIO Executive Council on August 20th, 2021. He filled the vacancy of the Executive Vice President position from March to June 2022. He has served on the Federation's Executive Council since 2008. Mr. Redmond's path to the Federation's second highest office began in 1973 when he went to work at Reynolds Metals Co. in Chicago and became a member of the United Steelworkers, the USW. He was active in his local union almost immediately, serving as shop steward and eventually becoming the vice president. He served 3 terms as local president. In 1996, Mr. Redmond joined the USW staff, working with local unions in the Chicago area before accepting a position at the International Union's headquarters in Pittsburgh in 1998. Anybody from Chicago here? Okay, got you. Yeah, I know there's typically a huge population of Chicago people here. For decades, he served the USW in various staff and leadership roles, assisting local unions, developing and conducting training programs and bargaining contracts. As International Vice President for Human Affairs, a position to which he was first elected in 2006, Mr. Redmond oversaw the union's Civil and Human Rights Department and worked with USW allies across the country in responding to attacks on voting rights and in combating economic inequality. Redmond has spent his entire life fighting for racial justice in the workplace and throughout our communities. In 2016, he was appointed to Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf's Advisory Commission on African American Affairs, and in 2020, Redmond was tapped to chair the AFL-CIO Task Force on Racial Justice, which is a body focused on taking concrete action to address America's long history of racism and police violence against black people. Mr. Redmond has served on the boards of directors of Working America, the community affiliate of the AFL-CIO, Transit Africa Forum, the Workers' Defense League, the National Endowment for Democracy, the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists, Interfaith Worker Justice, and since 2007, he has served as the chair of the board of directors of the A. Philip Randolph Institute. In 2021, Redmond was elected president of the Trade Union Confederation of the Americas, a prestigious international post. What a resume. Just hearing Mr. Redmond's inspiring climb through the ranks forces me to digress for a moment to speak to my Morehouse brothers, who I know are attending this college to become leaders. What are you going to do once you graduate? Get a job, a well-paying job with benefits? I know for many of you, getting a job that provides a good wage and dignity is possible because of unions and their leaders who fought for our right to organize. And I know right now many of you are also working yourselves through college, some part-time, some full-time, taking long days at work, then coming back to the dorm or apartment, wherever you stay, to fill out a midterm. And I understand that struggle, and I sympathize with all of you. And, you know, across the country, there's been a movement of workers across multiple industries organizing their workplaces and fighting for better, safer, and more dignified employment. We all understand the history of the South and its relationship to black people and labor. Think about the timeline from the past to the present. How should we think about and contend with labor and workers' rights as a civil rights struggle? What is the cost of advocacy if we think both historically and in the present? Now, back to our esteemed speaker, who has been on the front lines of so many labor issues. It is my honor to present the Secretary-Treasurer of the AFL-CIO, Mr. Fred Redmond.
Good morning, Morehouse. I want to, first of all, thank Patrick Darrington for that warm and overly kind introduction. You know, Patrick made me sound so important that I don't know about y'all, but I can't wait to hear what I'm going to say. But Patrick, thank you for that introduction and for all that you do. And I also want to thank Dr. Cynthia Hewitt and the entire International Labor Comparative Studies team for the opportunity to join you today. I am indeed grateful to be here at this institution, Morehouse College, because you have such a rich civil rights history. And so does the city of Atlanta. It also has a rich labor history. You know, little known fact, one of the first recorded strikes involving African American women in the United States happened right here in Atlanta in 1881. And it was known as the Atlanta Washerwomen Rebellion. These sisters, they went on strike to demand, 1881, They went on strike to demand fair treatment, higher wages, and some control over how they go about their work. They were threatened and ridiculed. But these women, they stuck together and they ultimately achieved their demands. And that just goes to show that civil rights and workers' rights, these two histories are intertwined, they're connected. They complement each other. And I know that the spirit of Dr. King looms large on this campus. And I suspect that every speaker who comes to Morehouse College, they feel compelled to talk about Dr. King and his legacy, and how you, the students here today, will be torchbearers for justice and all of that. And no doubt you are, and no doubt that you will. You've got your eyes on the future, and you'll want to make your mark on the world. And we need you. Our world is in trouble today, and we need you. And we need you to improve your communities, to make life better for those who come behind you. That's our calling, and we're depending so much on you to answer the call. But I would like to take a few minutes, if I may, to talk about the AFL-CIO and the American labor movement. As Patrick said, I'm the Secretary-Treasurer of the AFL-CIO. We are the largest federation of unions in the United States. We represent nearly 15 million workers from 63 national unions in all sectors of our economy. We represent workers in the auto industry, the steel industry, teachers, nurses, oil refinery workers. We represent actors and professional athletes. We represent the NFL Players Association. We represent the Major League Ball Players Association, the Men and Women National Hockey Leagues. We represent workers throughout this country, people who go to work every day and wake this country up every morning and tuck this country to sleep at night. And it is our mission as a federation to ensure that all working people are treated fairly, that they receive decent paychecks and benefits, that they have safe jobs, dignity, and equal opportunities. We help people acquire valuable skills and job readiness, and through our apprenticeship programs, we operate the largest training network outside of the U.S. military. And we work to advance legislation at the federal and state levels and at the local level to create good jobs. And coalitions of labor unions make up the AFL-CIO, our state federations. We have a state AFL-CIO in every state throughout the United States, in all 50 states. And then we have 485 community organizations called our Central Labor Councils. And they are the heart of the labor movement. They champion better policies for working families in state and local governments. We advocate for strengthening Social Security and private pensions, ensuring tax policies that are fair to working families, and making high-quality, affordable health care available to all workers throughout this country. We fight for keeping good jobs at home by reforming the trade rules, reindustrializing the United States economy, and provide worker protections in the global economy. And we stand firm, and we stand committed to holding corporations accountable for their actions. We help make safe, equitable workplaces and make sure that people could come home at night in the same condition that they went to work in that morning. And we give people a collective voice to address workplace injustices without the fear of retaliation. We fight for social and economic justice, and we strive to vanquish oppression in all of its forms. Our unions are working to build a broad, inclusive movement, reaching out and collaborating with many groups not traditionally thought of as part of the union community. We have doctors and lawyers today are forming unions, scientists, research and graduate assistants at colleges and universities throughout this country. And nearly half of all union members hold a bachelor's degree. And nearly half of all union members are women. And roughly 40% of all union members are people of color. And we are particularly interested in finding ways to improve the lives and working conditions of students and young workers who are entering the workforce during a tumultuous time, economic upheaval that is being caused by artificial intelligence and new technologies. And we're up against an administration that has made it a priority to attack workers, whose leaders have said that they want to traumatize federal workers, and who, instead of using diversity, equity, and inclusion, access as a constellation of principles to help frame equitable policy, has weaponized any form of DEI and use it to advance a narrow and dangerous ideology. And using the battle on what they call wokeness as a smokescreen to hide the fact that Elon Musk and this president are trying to concentrate their power and wealth for them and their billionaire buddies. What we are seeing is the reformation of our government that's being reformed by the billionaires that try to construct the government for the billionaires. That's our challenge. That's what we're up against. Because this administration is damaging our global standing and destroying long-standing alliances and pandering to adversaries and turning our backs on countries where we have a strong presence and creating a vacuum for fringe groups and extremists to take hold. This administration wants to take away our health care and retirement security to fund more tax cuts for their billionaire friends. That's what we're up against. They're making it more difficult for the government to perform the services that we rely on, turning agencies that act as watchdogs for the American taxpayers into lapdogs. That's what we're up against. They strip power away from the agency that makes sure that union elections are conducted fairly and within the rule of law. They defamed the EEOC, tore it apart, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and they put someone with a long track record of jeopardizing workers' safety in charge of the agency that oversees worker safety. They have paused funding of critical research efforts at colleges and universities and health centers, deleting data and cutting essential public health agencies such as the CDC right here in Atlanta. Now we're watching what could be decades of progress come crumbling to the ground. Students, this is a pivotal moment in America. We are caught in a struggle for our future And look, when you get into a situation like we are in today, it's easy to despair. It's easy to look the other way, to tap out, to stay silent. But I believe that democracy, the labor movement, the civil rights movement are one and the same. And I believe that trade unions are the last line of defense for democracy and for our freedoms. But I am reminded of the words of Frederick Douglass: without struggle, there is no progress. And I am reminded of the words of Dr. King that the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice, which are ways to say that progress is never permanent, that our rights and freedoms are never guaranteed. They will always be threatened and attacked, and there will be setbacks along the way, and it's up to us, it's up to you to help us recommit and redouble our efforts so we may live in the world that we want to live in. And we know that progress doesn't come all at once, it's incremental. If we could erase all the pain and all the suffering and brutality and idiocracy from the world with the snap of a finger, then we would do it, if only it was that easy. But societal changes come from people joining together to fight injustice. You know, it was not long ago when people who looked like me, and most of you in this room, couldn't vote or live in certain neighborhoods or sit in certain sections of the bus. We couldn't go to the same beaches or drink from the same fountains or eat at the same restaurants as our fellow citizens. And so when we feel like the world is spiraling out of control, sometimes it helps to zoom out, to pull back the lens, and see the progress that we've made in our communities and in the American labor movement. See, I've seen it in my own lifetime. And one thing that they cannot take away from us, everybody in this room has a story. I have a story. You see, my parents were born in the Mississippi Delta. They were the children of sharecroppers. And in 1952, my parents made their way north, like so many other black families, seeking to build a better life in a period known as the Great Migration. And they settled on the south side of Chicago. But that better life for them and their growing family, it took faith, hard work, and a little luck. My father, he took every type of job that he could find. He was a janitor, he pumped gas, he stocked shelves at the supermarket, he hauled scrap metal just to make a better life for his family. And my mother was a domestic worker. She woke up every day at the crack of dawn and she took 3 buses to the far suburbs of Chicago to clean folks' houses and cook their food. And every night she would come home and sit at the foot of her bed and soak her feet and read her Bible. Never heard her complain. Never heard any excuses. You see, me and my 3 brothers, we grew up poor. We didn't know we was poor until one day, every Friday at school, they used to take up money for the local orphanage in our neighborhood. And I remember my brother asking my mother, I need a quarter for the poor kids. And it was at that moment that mama set us down and said, y'all are the poor kids. Don't get this twisted, okay? And we were on assistance programs, food stamps. We got health care from the free clinic. Mama shopped at Goodwill. But all of that changed when my dad caught a break and he got that first good union job at the Reynolds aluminum mill. All of a sudden, I went through a human transformation. No longer did we go to the free clinic. Mama took us to a doctor's office. No longer did Mama shop at Goodwill. We went to Sears Roebuck. That was a step up. She went to the Goodwill to drop off clothes. My father saved and bought a brand new used car. First time in his life. And my parents saved and was able to buy their first home. The American dream. And he got that because he worked under a union contract, guaranteed wages and benefits. That union job lifted my family out of poverty. And my parents were able to build a solid middle-class life. I'm serious about this stuff because I saw the power of what it means to hold a union card, of working under a collective bargaining agreement, a contract, of linking hands with sisters and brothers and siblings for the greater good and a better life. We witnessed how a good union job at factories and mills and industrial jobs like the one that my father had built the black middle class and built vibrant communities across the Midwest and the Northeast. Now, I didn't intend to follow my father in the aluminum mill. You know, I was, believe it or not, it was 100 pounds ago, I was all-conference football player. First person in my family to get a free ride to college. I was headed to the University of Wisconsin. I had a full scholarship, but I injured my knee in our homecoming game that senior year. Now, this was before computers and before technology really had took its place. This was like 1974, right? And I reported to Madison, Wisconsin that year for my football workouts, and on my second day of practice, I remember the coach, one of the assistant coaches, saying, "Redmond, coach want to see you in his office." And I went to the coach's office, and they gave me a physical when I first reported, and he said, "How come you didn't tell us about your knee?" I said, "Coach, it's all right. I'm just a little fragment, you know, I'll be all right." He said, "No, we can't take a chance." He said, "I need you to sit out this year, walk on next year. I got 16 seniors, walk on." Now, this was before 1983, which is important because in 1983, they passed a law where you could redshirt, sit out a year of sports, and keep your scholarship. On the way out the coach's office, he said, "You need to stop by the financial aid office." And I stopped by, and they told me that to stay in school for my first year for 2 semesters was going to cost my father, 1974, was going to cost $3,800. That was a lot of money. So I called my father, and he was pretty shook up about it. He was on the phone calling people, trying to borrow money. I said, "Don't worry about that. Let's just go home." And on the way home, I was consoling him. And we drove back from Madison, and I wound up taking a few courses at Chicago State University. And it was at that moment I found out, damn, I didn't know nothing. I had 100 everything, English 100, everything. Because I found out in high school they was passing me because I was an athlete. And then I went out to Reynolds Aluminum, that same mill that my father worked. They had a summer work program for college kids. And I did that. And at the end of the summer, I knew I wanted to work there full time, and I did. And I got involved in the union. It was United Steelworkers Local 3911, and that is what set me on my path. In just 2 generations, my family went from Mississippi sharecroppers to impoverished on the south side of Chicago to me becoming the highest ranking African American in the history of the labor movement. See, that's the power of a union job. And today's labor movement is more diverse and more inclusive than ever before. We're the largest organization of working women in the country. Our federation is led by Leah Schuler, who was the first woman elected to the Federation's top office. And women are leading more than a quarter of our state federations and nearly half of our central labor councils. Some of the largest unions in America are led by women and people of color. And that wasn't always the case. You know, this year marks the 100th year anniversary of the founding of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, the first black labor union in America to become part of the AFL-CIO. You know, when A. Philip Randolph organized Pullman Porters in 1925, most black folks had a great distrust in organized labor. Discrimination was common and a tolerated practice throughout our society, and labor unions was no exception. So look, Dr. King saw the connection between racism and economic oppression. He knew that you could not have racial justice without economic justice. And that's why he worked with Dr. King in order to build the relationship between civil rights and organized labor. So look, I got a note here, so I'm gonna wrap it up. But let me just say this. I don't want to overstay my welcome. But let me just say this. Young workers, you need the support of the labor movement now more than ever. And we are committed to being right there working alongside you to build a country that is fair and where you can reach your best and your fullest potential. But more than that, the labor movement needs you. We need you as members, we need you as activists and as leaders. We're counting on you to lead the way, to continue to push our diverse and inclusive labor movement forward. We need you to show the country and the world that no matter where we came from or where we're going, no matter the color of our skin or the language we speak, or the age or gender or religion or who we choose to love, the labor movement is the place where everyone is welcome, where workers can stand together and march together and fight together in pursuit of the greater good. Through our strength, our solidarity, we can overcome the longest odds and together build a society that is just and fair and a future that works for all of us. That's what the labor movement is about. That's our history, that's our legacy that we carry forward. We can build the world we want, the world we deserve, but we have to work for it. We have to stand for it together. We have to stand together to bring out the best in America. We got to stand together to bring out the best in ourselves and to each other. So I want to thank you for your time, and later on I'm going to take some questions, I guess. I don't know if I'm going to take those now, but believe me, it is an honor for me to be in this room with the future leaders of our country. And I want to say thank you for getting as far as you have so far. But more importantly, I want to thank you for what you're going to do to save our country. Thank y'all very much. Y'all come here.
So this is the time for our Q&A, and we actually have some questions, but we know that we're a little bit short on time. So if you actually have some questions that you would like to ask Secretary Treasurer Redmond, please line up over here in the aisles, and we can begin taking your questions.
Mr. Redmond, thank you, sir, for that presentation. I'm going to hold this. That was excellent. I loved it. And I have a couple questions for you. And it's preceded by the fact that I am a young man of faith. And I loved what you said about faith and talking about your family and reading, your mother reading the Bible. That spoke to me. And so my first question for you is, are you familiar with a man named William J. Barber II?
Very familiar with them. I had a conversation with Reverend Barber the other day. I've worked with them throughout the years, starting with the Moral Monday movement in North Carolina, and we're planning some activities now in order to address what's happening in America.
Well, that's like music to me. He baptized me.
Oh,
Love
great.
that guy. And I was going to talk to you about the Poor People's Campaign. And just ask, because he told me a little bit about it. And I suppose like when you talk about workers' rights and you talk about union things, the first thing that comes to my mind is the poor. And you talk about students and whatnot, and the poor can come over every, right, I don't know what you'd call that, bracket, if you will.
Right.
So there's poor students, there's poor old people, poor young people, it doesn't matter. But my question for you about that is, does your organization partner with people or organizations like the Poor People's Campaign? That might be a pretty simple sounding question, but I am curious about it.
Sure. We partner with organizations like the Poor People Campaign, NAACP, other civil rights organizations around this world. Because when you talk about poor people, let me tell you what most poor people do. They go to work every day. Mm-hmm. They go to work every day but cannot afford decent wages to support them and their families. Most poor people in this country go to work every day but has no health care, has no retirement security like pensions. So what we do in the labor movement is, first of all, we try to organize those poor workers into our union, because the greatest emancipation for poor people in this country is the work on the collective bargaining agreement, where we negotiate the terms of employment, the wages, the benefits. So we work very diligently in terms of lifting up poor people in this country. And that's one classification of poor people. And then we have poor people by no fault of their own, okay, are victims of a system that, if we're honest with each other, a system that promotes white supremacy, and a system that is designed where 20% of people in this country, 20%, control 80% of the wealth, okay? So when we talk about poor people, we're talking about victims. We're talking about people who's trapped in this society, and the labor movement is committed to do a couple of things. Number one, we have to raise the minimum wage in this country. It's been $5.75 for the last 30 years. We have to make sure that health care becomes a right for all Americans, not a privilege. So, you know, working with the poor is is our most important mission, okay? Because people is not poor, most people are not poor by choice, okay? Despite all the rhetoric that you hear on some of these news stations, okay? So, you know, we work with different organizations around this country to lift people up and to make sure that people have a shot at this so-called American dream. So I appreciate your question. You know, to be baptized by Reverend Barber, that's a special deal. You know, Reverend Barber is very familiar with our movement. Our entire movement works with him. He's the real deal. Yeah. He's a person of faith. He's a person of character, and he's a person who's really have distinguished himself as the voice for the poor people throughout this country. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. And if you didn't mind, I had, I guess, my last little follow-up for what you said. I know we don't have a lot of time, but how difficult do you find it to influence or meet with these government decision makers to help advance changes in legislation? Are you finding that hard?
Well, it's very difficult. When I first became Secretary-Treasurer of the AFL-CIO, I was doing an interview with the newspaper, and I remember the reporter asked me, "What is it about your job you don't like?" And I had to think about that for a minute. The worst part of my job is I spend too much time meeting and talking to people I just don't like. People who I don't share their interests. Corporate CEOs, politicians whose their only goal is the next election, who done turn their backs on their constituents who delivered them. So, you know, and then on the flip side, we have some good friends. We have some good friends in the Congress and in the Senate, but it's a battle, because what we're battling for is the type of America that we want to live in. So it becomes difficult at times, but we stay focused on the principles that made this country great.
All right, sir. God bless you. Thank you.
God bless you. I get nervous over it. I'm gonna keep my answers brief. Okay, all right. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for giving your time to Morehouse. I had two questions. My first one is, how are labor unions protected? Just one.
We can only make it
Okay,
one.
I'll do my other
Sorry.
question.
Yes.
How do you mentioned that we've been fighting for our own rights, fighting for labor unions for a very long time. We don't see that change often. How do you discourage violent retaliation against the organizations that don't allow us to have that freedom? Because we see it work January 6th, where we have violence, and we don't see a lot of that kind of negative effect on them, but we can't do the same thing. So how do you discourage that? How do you discourage us from doing that?
Well, we've had examples throughout history of the way to affect those God-given principles of civility, of righteousness, and most of all, what's fair. And those examples have been Mahatma Gandhi, Dr. King, and others who we believe in the labor movement, just like in the civil rights movement, okay, is that we're not going to win a violent confrontation, okay? Our movement is based on nonviolence, resistance. Our movement is about trying to influence and trying to affect policy. And our movement is about standing on principles that we feel that the majority of Americans support. Principles like having a voice in the workplace. Principles like having a safe job. Principles like sharing in the wealth that workers create on the job every day. So we stand on those principles, and we reject violent confrontations, because history has shown that for a people who's being oppressed, is that violence has not worked, and our mission is too important to resort to those sort of tactics. So we stand on principle, we're God-fearing, and we believe in righteousness, and we believe in doing what's right for working people and working families.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
This is Redmond. My name is Manuel Rodriguez. I'm a junior econ poli-sci double major from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. As somebody who's interested in going into the law profession, what would you recommend, or how do you think somebody going into the law profession could impact or get involved or into the labor movement?
Well, I think first of all, a young man like yourself, I think you ought to seek an internship with one of the national unions as a law student. All 63 of our unions have law departments, and we have a law department at the AFL-CIO. And if you're interested in studying law that's going to make a difference in people's lives, like civil rights laws, labor laws, stuff like that, then we have a place for you in the labor movement. So I'll be happy to pass my card to you, but you could apply to any of our 63 unions' law departments for an internship.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Superior McCown. I'm a freshman, poli-sci major. I just wanted to first start off by saying, I appreciate you for your work. Understanding the importance of labor, and as it being I feel personally the main combat against our own power structure system that is capitalism. I feel like that's ultimately important. Organizing in general. I just wanted to ask, what do you feel the best way, or what strategies have those in unions taken up to deal with things such as just the gigs, or how independent contractors more often today they're not given the same amount of labor autonomy or rights as workers that that aren't independent contractors. What do you do in that position to combat those type of situations?
Yeah, the gig economy is a very thriving economy that, number one, we've tried to, I think we're on the verge of getting success in the state of Minnesota in making sure that gig workers, Uber, Lyft drivers, and folks that fall into that gig economy is classified as employees and have the same protections as rights under the National Labor Relations Act, and have the ability to bargain for wages and benefits. Minnesota is the fourth state that we tried this strategy by influencing the state legislature, and I feel good about the momentum that we have in the state of Minnesota. But let me just say this. Gig workers, corporations have used gig workers because gig workers are not classified with the protections on the National Labor Relations Law. Okay, so we need to change the dynamics. We need to change the paradigm, and we need to make sure that all gig workers in this country is classified as workers and have the rights under the National Labor Relations Act.
Gosh, yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
So we're at time. We understand that you are going to sing the hymn and that some of you have to transition to go to your next class. But if you would like to stay afterwards and ask questions, you are welcome to do so. So we will take some questions afterwards. But we have to show respect for the students who have to transition to their next classes. Thank you.